So what I was going to do is very quickly just try and recapture, but as I was thinking, I was sitting down writing it last night, and I had kind of pictures in my head, and as I was kind of thinking of them, I thought, God, I have more images in my head than I have words on the page. So I had captured some messages and some images. So I thought if I share some of the images with you, it might bring you back to some of the speakers. I had this image thanks to James Riofanti Burnham and Rowan Williams having a pint somewhere quietly. I would love to know what they were saying, who they were talking about, whether they were listening, but I just have that picture. But I also too, I had a picture when James was talking about the demolition of a water tank in Palestine has a way of evicting people. I'd never known that. I didn't know that that's how one way of evicting people. It never dawned on me that people are so dependent on water. I remember I was listening also to Billy Vaughan, and that picture of people outside Parliament protesting, being told to be quiet. We're debating the protest bill on the inside. You kind of think, oh my God, like, you know, how cheeky. So there is something in that kind of really caught me, as well as, of course, Billy saying how the voice of the Irish carries for miles, which it did, and beside him then we had Paul, who was from another part, and then we had John Battle, who tried to claim he was Irish through his wife's passport. So we kind of had a progressively growing Irish table yesterday, was just the vision of it. But one thing that really struck me was Billy spoke, and I'd heard this actually from Anne Wilkinson as well, spoke about elderly Quakers on a mobility scooter turning up outside a mosque, not to protest, but to add support at a difficult time. And then at a different time to turn up at an event on scooters because they were less able than others, so the amount of effort it took, I often wonder, like, they would have taken more time to collaborate and team up and ring each other. What time are you going? We'll go together. How will we do that? And we'll be together. And will you bring the poster? Will I bring the poster? Will you have a sandwich? What do we do? How will we do this? All that kind of planning. I was only thinking about it last night. It must have taken fierce coordination. But then to have them criminalised for the effort of protesting as elderly, less mobile people, there is something prophetic about that picture that really kind of caught me. It was just one of the images that stuck with me. I think it was Kevin who reminded us of how Catholic leaders are sometimes absent shepherds, and that picture of an absent shepherd really kind of gave a picture of a lost flock, or not sure where to go, or maybe it's a case that the flock were saying, come on and we'll show you the way. I couldn't quite get the picture, but it was something that was said a couple of times and came up. Billy Vaughan reminded us to keep the capital J in Just Talk. And they also talked about, others had talked about, I think it was Colin mentioned, moving from just talk to just action, that the two kind of go hand in hand, and how will we do it? And maybe that's a little bit about this morning. On Friday I was talking about meeting people during Lent and having that conversation, and I was reminded by Michael this morning when he kind of spoke about people talking and having a one-to-one, that actually we've far more in common than we have as difference. And how Michael was saying, like, I don't have to agree with everything this person is about or does or says, but if I go out of my way to meet them, I might find I'll meet the person before I meet their issue, and somewhere in there is the way of building forward. That whole notion of encounter, building relationships, one-to-ones, knowing and learning about the person, that somewhere in there is growth and there is possibility and there is hope. I liked Liz's notion of Newcastle being black and white, and I thought, wow, that actually says a lot. If you remember when she said she was so proud of Newcastle that they didn't vote the way others were voting when it came to Brexit, but also they were kind of inclusive, that they announced proudly that Newcastle was black and white, and I thought there was something really good in that. I also thought Liz's picture of security guards with carnations, I couldn't get that out of my head. I thought, there's a photograph, I'd love to have seen it. that it certainly disempowers, or it certainly softens the notion of security guards at a detention centre if they're holding carnations. However that was managed, I don't know, but it was a good idea. And I then have the picture of Paul Morrison talking about the mural at the end of the street, where there's a picture, a fantastic mural. And a lot of these, I don't know if you've ever seen them, they are really well done. They catch your eye. They are superb. The detail in some of these murals. But the slogan was just jarring. If I'm not mistaken, it had "ready for peace, but prepared for war." I can hear other people have remembered it as well. And it's not a little A4 poster. It's the full gable end of a house. So these things kind of stand out. I have the notion too that either Protestants or Catholics look like E.T. That came up too. And I have the feeling that somehow Paul feels his mum was cheated out of a Nobel Peace Prize for the school that she started. But actually even that just snippet from him told us an awful lot about what he does or where he came from and his background and what his mum was thinking, and you know, the power of simple things. He spoke about recreational rioting, which when I thought about it, I thought, actually yes, there are better organised riots. He said, when people got together, we did it better. You know, we were able to do it kind of your turn, our turn. But in that communication of kind of bumping into each other, arranging things that weren't so good, there was some coming together. And even that notion of, well, I had to meet my Sinn Féin counterpart across the photocopier because it didn't work. And then at the end, the two lads, you know, it just looked as though they were the Chuckle Brothers all over again. And they were kind of announced, and then they kind of put their arms around each other, and it was John Batty who said, who'd have thought 20 years ago? You know? And he looked at the pair of them. It was just those images that kind of stuck with me, you know. And John then referred to, which I thought Michael spoke about this morning, that building difference or building trust across difference, or meeting the person before you take on the issue and knowing the person a little bit better. John spoke about his time in Kosovo, if you remember, and he spoke about the Albanian man and the Serb, and the Albanian wouldn't come out of his house because he was petrified, and they had to go and get him, and under security they brought him back to a power plant that wasn't working. But they needed the cooperation of the Albanian man and the Serb in order to get this up and running, because this was a huge impediment to the progress for everybody. So the two gentlemen quietly put aside what were their differences and got on with what they had in common, which was the job and the need to make things better for everyone. And side by side they worked and got that job done. And as I was thinking about that, I kind of thought, it's all these things that happen incidentally that provide often some of the best lessons, the quietest lessons. And I thought too, I didn't want to say it really, but I thought it was a better example than the two meeting across the photocopier. I mean, theirs was only a paper jam, this was Kosovo after all. I don't know whether, was it Paul who said, as part of JPIT, a job he took on for 3 months and is there now 20 years, he kind of smiled at the notion that a Baptist might have a good idea, or maybe even a Methodist might have a good idea. I kind of smiled too, but you know, I think it was the fact that maybe it was the way he told it. And I think the stories that we got from people were colourful. And what we got was some of them, and what we got was encounter. And we were beginning to realise throughout the course of the morning that actually this idea of difficult conversations often begins with encounter. And Michael and Faye copper-fasted it again this morning when they talked about the how part. I remember even Paul was saying, so on our streets the cobblestones were even red, white and yellow, and the whole idea of split communities. I liked the idea of, the maths, was it Paul again? It said the idea of the Bible missing a graph, how he just told us all how it was like a quiet admission, how he loved a good graph, you know. It reminded me of, was it Derry Girls, when they kind of said the Catholics do good statues. Well, yeah, they do good statues, you know. It was like they need a good graph. And he thought, even he kind of mused like, what would the Bible be like with a few pie charts, you know? It was almost like he found it a little bit more interesting. He also reminded us too that it's hard to sustain hate when you're looking people in the eye. So when you see the whites of the eyes, really it's very hard to maintain the position you might have done if you weren't away. And I kind of thought, we're back to the encounter thing again. We're back to meeting people, and maybe there's something in that. The hug that Liz described yesterday from the Jewish man outside the detention centre, the one she gave and the one she got, and what it meant, and that kind of coming together around an issue again building trust across difference. These are just some of the images that stayed with me. This morning Faye gave us that notion of the triangle, the inspiration, education and action triangle. I thought, well, there's another image, you know. And then the image of a child of 13 or 14 maybe saying, well, I bring a knife to school. And you think, oh my goodness. We had the notion of Billy, which I thought was really great, where he described Donegal farmers being annoyed when he told the story of how people have their land taken from them by maybe demolishing a water tank, or people just moving in saying, you're done here, move. And it was kind of trying to say to them, can you put yourself in their shoes? And very much, as he said himself, I won't get into it, he said, but we've had a problem with land in Ireland over the time, and I thought he put it very well. I think if he got into it, we'd still be here. But it was that visceral feeling that those got when they actually put themselves in that position of encountering the difficulty that the Palestinian folk had about the land that was taken. I loved the idea that Faye had, and I thought, wow, this is a gift. Imagine having a chair at every table where there's a young person can come up and sit, and when a question is asked, the young persons included can answer. And then that can rotate, so you will constantly have, and even the idea that when we sit, we're pretty much the same height no matter how old or what age you are, so there is a levelling of that. But that way of inclusion, I thought, well now, I think we might do something like that from then on. I have a picture of Michael's mum's Ruby wedding anniversary. I was wondering what they were doing while he was up here doing his thing. I wonder, are they having champagne, or are they sitting there saying, I wonder what Michael is doing this morning? But I have a feeling that they would be very, very proud of what Michael was doing this morning, and you know, they deserve everything. I like the idea of Donna now. Donna, who was the worker who was trying to get elected and is now a Reform councillor. And you kind of go, Donna? Like, what did she do that for? But then, as Michael said, well, actually, Donna is now one of our closest allies, and she's very much in tune with what we have. I do like to see, and I would love to see Jacob Rees-Mogg on Zoom. Does he lie down and take up the whole? How does he do Zoom? Anyway, that's it. Yeah. And a pride flag on City Council. These are just some of the images that I had from yesterday that kind of bring it together. But then some of the words that came up. We weren't inviting you to take notes and do whatever. We're also inviting you not to leave them kind of trapped in your notebook. We did ask you though what breaks your heart, and we did ask you also to remember that this weekend we were trying to bring out the notion of tables, not walls. And I think very much that was embraced. And I think when you got going on talking, I still think you're at it. I think you're just being polite now by not talking. But I think we really got there. What I also got to was we have a right to protest, and that right has been eroded. And I really learned something about it coming from that tender place of the promptings of a loving heart. I thought, what a great way of articulating the idea or the thought about behind protesting. Is free speech, and this question still bothers me, is free speech now just the preserve of those who hold the microphone? And that question was asked yesterday. And it was a question that, is it a case that those at the margins are those affected first, fastest and most are less likely to ever have the microphone, and if they do get it, do they just get it for a short while? Joe Sedeka spoke about messages of encouragement from the pulpit will be really, really welcome and supported, and were noticed in their absence, not just once, but several times. We were also told, Maria Lee, I think, spoke to us, and she told us that things are not all as bad as we think. Andy Burnham is actually quite a cooperative Prime Minister, and he listens, so we're going to take Maria at her word. Kevin spoke about Billy Vaughan's pieces being prophetic, poetic and powerful. And that communication really is about being authentic and just. And I think it was John Battle who kind of summarised it when he kind of said, we give you the gift of our listening as service. And I thought that's a lovely way of putting it. So we're not asking you to do someone a favour. It is a service for us to listen to you and to do with and not for. And that goes back to Faye, even including somebody on the chair at the end. And it was Liz who said, some people are told, well, your country is a safe country, so I don't know what you're doing here. And Liz said, yeah, it might well be a safe country, but it might not be safe for that person at that time. And that some people are too quick to jump out. She also reminded us that all faiths speak of welcoming a stranger. So no matter how well or not you get on or whether you've different, it doesn't matter. If all faiths speak of a welcome of a stranger, there is what we will talk about, something we have together in common. When we work together, we form relationships. And that friction releases a little bit of God. I thought that was just beautiful. When we work together, we form relationships, and that friction releases a little bit of God. And I thought, actually, imagine lots of relationships, lots of friction, lots of little bits of God or pieces of God coming out in that encounter. The idea of bringing stories from one place to another, which is essentially what happened over the weekend. We have had a great chance to hear stories, to listen to stories, and to pass stories on to each other. And every time you'd hear John Battle even coming off the cuff with a story, we wouldn't have heard about the Kosovan story, but he'd heard of a different story. So it brings out others, and that's the whole idea of the conference. The youth-led nature of Faye's speech, the reframing conversation that she asked you to do straight after your breakfast, turn to your neighbour and have a go. You did, and you did it really well. Dismissing and invalidating fear. It's not so much about that, it's about fronting up and recognising. And that young people growing, and she did tell us though that she felt that young people are growing up in an insecure space. Maybe less secure than when she grew up. And it was only when Alex asked a super question at the end, that we got from Michael and Faye a little bit more about their own childhood and what prompted them to do what they do and how they do what they do. Faye also told us really that knowledge, she had three questions really, or there was three aspects to her. There was knowledge in what you know, questioning in what you want to know, and then action in what are you going to do, or what would you like to happen. And she told us things like, immigrants are stealing all your houses. How do you feel about that? And she showed us how to reframe it. She also told us, which I thought was really super, that sometimes good people make bad decisions. And I thought, God, that actually can happen. And it can happen quite regularly. Like me, I'm still learning. I learned so much this morning and yesterday from lots of people. I'm inspired by so much of what I heard and the pictures and the messages. And so I've heard some people talk about being scared about their collective future. Michael, when he spoke this morning, told us how much he loved maths. No, hold on. No. Sorry, Michael, I just got that bit wrong. Everything else I've said this morning has been absolutely perfect. It's just that last little bit. Sorry. Michael hates maths. I'll just say that. He's very good at it, but it's not something he would like to pursue. He has found a new calling that perhaps he is very, very good at. And he has found that he no longer stands on the sidelines. In fairness, having had the adventure, which we have almost convinced him to put into film at this stage of his life, that idea of being a school chaplain, I even thought about that now. He came back from the Philippines, he saw this, oh, okay, right, I'll apply, and he got the job. Did you not get a fright?
No.
That kind of, oh my God, in 2 weeks I have to be...
Yes, absolutely, yes. It was a whirlwind.
It was a whirlwind, yeah. Sometimes the best decisions are made on the hop, but within 2 weeks then, you have to be in front of all of these students, and hard questions come all the time. The idea of knowing your own story, and that if something needs to be done, which I love this quote, I think it was Barack Obama, he had it, if something needs to be done, then lace up your shoes and do something. So in other words, take an active part in it. Don't just kind of say, well, somebody has to do something. I often remember somebody saying, well, like a lot of children are becoming quite anxious about climate change and the future, and our attitude was, well, you know, the antidote to that anxiety is to take action. It reduces anxiety. If you can be an agent in change, if you can be part of the difference, and if you know it's a serious topic, then, I don't know, maybe primary school children are great at that, because they just keep talking at you until you, do you agree? Do you agree now? Do you agree now? No, I won't eat my dinner. Do you agree now? I do, right, I'll eat my dinner. Or what? But I mean, they are kind of relentless in a way, but that whole idea of being curious, not careless, which is, I think, what a way forward for all of us. Be curious, because being curious is an invitation but not an obligation. Did I get that right? So I didn't get the maths bit right, but I got that bit right, Michael. Okay. So really, I suppose they were kind of some of the things that I took from the speakers this morning and from the speakers yesterday. Some of the imagery that I got from what I heard. I wasn't in any of the workshops because I had one to give and I didn't get a word in, apart from a couple of boring slides I showed at the beginning. And then everybody else just kind of, get out of the way, we want to talk about this. And they got on with it, which was wonderful for me. But, and I know, listening to others in the workshop, so many got so much more. So I'm going to stop there. And I'll tell you why I'm going to stop, because, well, you've heard enough now. But we only have a kind of a short period of time. But what we were hoping is that maybe, for the next little while, you might maybe reflect on maybe what you've heard as a kind of a little bit of a summary of the morning and yesterday and the weekend, and you might take some of that with some of what you heard and learned, and maybe together we might put together something that we might say, hey Andy, if you were here, this is what you'd have heard, but you didn't bother, did you? So, we're taking this to you. So if we had a conference statement or something that we would like to have, we will send this to him on your behalf, on our collective behalf. So that would be the plan. So I'm going to offer you the chance maybe over the next 10, 15 minutes. We'll give you 15 minutes, quite short. And then we'll try and take a little bit of feedback. And then after that, we're almost done. Okay, I'm going to leave it over to you, so I'll stop there. So if you want to just gather in with a few people beside you, it doesn't matter if your group is 2, 3 or 10. But just make sure that everybody has a chance to say something. So I'll stop and I'll hand it over to you for a little while. Thanks again. We have about 10 minutes or maybe a little bit more, 10 or 15 minutes maybe. And the plan would be maybe is to give you a chance to tell us what came out of this conference for you or for those within the group. And the point being, and we have Stephen in the corner over there who has been filming the insert, so I'm going to try and write down, but if I don't get it, I might repeat what's said to be sure that on the recording so that we'll be able to prepare something, making sure that none of what you have said has been left out, because we're determined that if Mohammed won't go to the mountain, we're going to bring the mountain to Mohammed or to Andy Burnham, if that's the case. So maybe if there is any group would like to begin, we might begin maybe on this side to save Mike with the mic, going back and forward. And is there anybody on this side might like to begin? We have Andy here up front and there are others on the way. Great. So as you're thinking, brilliant. Sorry.
Thank you. I'm Andy from Nottingham Diocese. In our group, there were two things really, I think, very short and sweet. One is to keep grounded in what's important and to keep putting people first. And the other one is to do things out of love.
Good message. Thank you. Is there somebody else? There's also, yeah, and there's a couple of people also there, Kevin as well, and Sherelle.
So I'm Catherine, and this is for Andy Burnham to copy what's happened here and to create spaces of intergenerational encounter. that was feedback from Jams, isn't it? From Fave Jams, about how young people would really get a great deal out of this kind of encounter. The other was to Andy, don't be afraid to dialogue with people who disagree. To affirm the attempts he's making for dialogue, and on our part to emphasise our rights to protest and to strengthen those rights, to find a way of giving him a summary of the moving stories that we've heard around immigration, etc., and to invite him to next year's conference.
I like that. So your list is quite short, really. and you finish it off on that lovely note of hope that we'll make the bed for you, come and get it. Yeah, I love it. Thank you indeed. Maria is here as well, and there's Sherelle in the middle, I think, would like to say. Thank you indeed, Catherine, for that, and to your group, and to Faye Peace Jam. Was that how it was put? Thank you. Sherelle, go ahead.
Hi, my name's Sherelle. I'm from the Lancaster Diocese. We've sort of on two levels. So there was the personal level that we've taken about of having courage to, I think what Faye was saying about, if somebody says something, how to get why are they saying that, you know, get to the heart of what they mean by what they're saying. And we said we would have to do what Brian suggested, is practice it in front of the mirror before we go out and actually do it, because sometimes we don't think of it till afterwards, because these encounters can be quite brief and, you know, unexpected. So there was that personal level, the level of not judging people by either how they look or what they say. And you know, and not reacting when somebody says something that we actually think is quite outrageous, because, you know, some of us have faces that automatically tell the other person what they think. So try to practice being a bit deadpan.
Thank you, Sherelle.
And then the other side is for Andy Burnham, is to enter into dialogue, to take the quote, nothing about us without us is for us. There are a lot of people in this country who don't vote, so their voice isn't heard, and, you know, they need to be listened to. And also to echo the group at the back, that to re-look at our right to protest and our right to challenge.
Thank you, Sherelle. Maria here.
Well, one of the actions I'm going to do as an individual is I'm going to write letters to the Chancellor, the Secretary of State for Defence, Andy Burnham, my own MP, who is a Conservative, and ask them about the possibility of appointing a Minister for Peace, and to give me reasons as to whether they agree or disagree, so that I can get back to them. And would you like to say what you're going to do?
Not to put you on the spot now, Alex, but here.
What a challenge. I belong to a number of social action groups in the South, including the anti-racism group, but the majority of the people there, the average age is 80s. So having seen Michael and Faye talk here, I will invite them to come and motivate young people so that there's intergenerational dialogue in the South.
Thank you very much. So there you go. There's your next gig, folks. Thank you indeed, Alex. Okay. Do you want to nominate the next person? Oh, no, I'm joking. Anybody else like to speak? And then maybe on this side of the room, there are a number of people also. Yeah. You might add to what's been said if it hasn't been covered. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Andrew from Plymouth Diocese. I came as a +1 from an activist and I think I can now become one. Thank you for the conference, particularly for the techniques and tactics that have been suggested. That's useful. Anyway, dear Andy, you have a reputation as a listener. Thank you for that. We'd like to encourage you to continue that and to teach our nation how to listen to people with different points of view. Emmanuel said, and we agreed, that opening question about what breaks your heart has extraordinary power, and just to encourage people to talk to each other about what breaks their heart, and then follow up and act upon it. Thank you, Prime Minister.
So while you were speaking there, I just kind of took down, so dear Andy, thank you. You have a reputation as a listener. Thank you for that. We ask you to continue doing this and to teach others in our country how to listen also. We ask you to consider what breaks your heart. How do I finish it? Is it love, Andy, or?
God bless you.
God bless you. Okay, and see you next year. I like that. Yeah. Okay, very good. Okay, thank you indeed, Andy, and thank you for that indeed. You might bring a +1 next year, Andy, again, and we'll with you then next time. Oh, well, not swap out the +1 you have, but I mean, you might bring another one. What have I said? Yeah, not them kind of encounters. Sam.
We wanted to report back to Andy, but we know he's got a tough gig, so we want to start out friendly of, hi Andy, how's it going so far? We missed you at NJPM 2026. We know you would have been here as our keynote speaker at Just Talk conference if other commitments had not dragged you away. This is what you missed. And then report back to him and talk about those who are not present at the top table.
I might ask you to send me the text to that email then when you do, Sam. That's great. Sam has my email, so because I didn't get all of that, but I got the last part, which was tell them about those who are not present at the top table, and the invitation again. So thank you indeed, Sam, for that. I think you hit a note there. Are there others from?
Joe Ryan, name. Just on a personal note, I've been coming for a number of years, and I found this conference very inspiring, partly because of its simplicity, but simply profound. I mean, I'm all for powerful intellectual presentations, but most of it goes over my head, whereas on this occasion there were so many practical and simple things like, you know, what is it that breaks my heart? Because that says so much and it opens so many doors. So I want to thank the organisers, Anne and her team, for all of the details and there's so many things in the background that we maybe take for granted. So I wanted that recorded as a word of gratitude, and that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Paul Bowden.
I'll attempt to summarise at least one point that was made in our group, which is clearly for some of us there will be some distaste at kind of engaging with people we don't disagree with, particularly on the hard right. But there's something in what we've done today that I think we can commend to Andy Burnham, and he will be up for, which is really a complete shift in the way that under Starmer the Labour government tried to engage with hard right politics. Previously, the strategy was to sort of compromise, I suppose, or to adopt the same approach. What I've seen emerging this weekend is that actually through dialogue there is a completely different strategy, and that the underpinning of a lot of hard right policy, which is ill-founded in fact, can actually be unmasked, and so changes can be made to the way that we engage, and the Labour Party particularly can engage with that foe that they are clearly so afraid of. So I think there's something in the practice of dialogue that a lot of previous prime ministers have come in advocating the big conversation, and we do need something like that. But there needs to be something that really particularly engages hard right politics now.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you. Before we close off this session, is there anybody else? Oh, there is. Yes, please. There is. Yeah, and there's somebody down the back here. We might take these two people, and then maybe we'll. Yeah, thank you indeed.
My name is Father Emmanuel. I just wanted to add something to the lady. Sorry, I can't remember your name.
Maria.
But I thought we should clap for her for suggesting that we should create a minister for peace in this country. So we need peace, and we pray for peace every day. So if we could bring that to Parliament, a minister for peace, both peace, absence of arms, but also inner peace, and that will touch on the big question, the $1 million question you asked us: what breaks our heart? So I would love us, if we can, put all what breaks our hearts together and forward to Andy Burnham so that he knows what breaks our heart. And then in that sense, that my third point is, I know, including myself, when you tell somebody we are praying for you, who wish well, it makes a lot of sense. If we can also send our voice to Andy Burnham, even to Reform UK, Nadia Farage, and say we are praying for you, it might be also our ministry as Justice and Peace. Thank you.
Thank you indeed. Action points on this. Thank you, Father Manuel.
Jim Barneville from Cardiff, Menevia. Slightly something that came out of what we've been saying today, and it struck me that the model we see of debate that we see in Parliament is actually a bun fight. It's not dealing with the issues, and I wonder if Andy and like-minded politicians from across the parties would turn it into a session like Prime Minister's question on the issues and not on the personalities and the waste of time. After all, we pay for them, and they think that they can just throw brickbats at each other. So for us to change the nature of what's going on under Andy's leadership, maybe we'll start to turn things around to be a decent, democratic parliament and not be a bum fight.
We're pretty much, I think, at the end of our session. So, from my point of view, I want to just thank those who were on stage this morning. In particular, I want to thank Michael and Faye, who not just did all the preparations and met Zoom conversations previous to try and make sure we had everything in order, but then did all this prep, and who stayed up at night and were learning their lines this morning before we started. I could see that you didn't see all this paddling of the water, underneath the water when they got up there. And then for the forthrightness and the honesty with which they answered questions, and we learned so much more about them this morning and their gift and generosity and sharing not just their work but of themselves this morning. And I think they have made new friends this morning. We certainly have also, so I want to thank you very much indeed for that. I want to thank all of you for your really deep listening, for your conversations, for the warmth that I could feel towards Faye and towards Michael and towards any of our speakers, not just today but also yesterday, and I think anybody who was on the stage will have felt that. And I think it was Father Jim this morning who kind of really thanked everybody, and how he had said, do you know what, when you keep it simple sometimes it really, really works, and there is something in that. So we have now, I have anyway, 3 or 4 pages of notes, and I have an email to come from Sam which will add to that, of what we should tell Andy Burnham and what we should take away from, and all of it a good suggestion. And maybe it'll give him time to think, and maybe he will realise, actually, I missed out on an opportunity not going to the NJPN conference this year. I won't let that happen again. So we'll keep a seat somewhere for him in the back when he comes next time. He won't necessarily be at the top table, but I don't think he'd mind. So I'm just going to sign up by thanking you, and I'm going to ask Anne then if Anne wouldn't mind coming up, and she will just take us through the last few stages of what has to happen today. So thank you all indeed.